My dad, my grandpas on both sides all died of heart attacks and cardiovascular disease in their late 50s, early 60s. Mom had a stroke early 60s. They call it the heart attack gene, with just that one gene variant, 150 to 200% risk. So I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of those things. I mean, the cardiologist said, I'm not worried about you at all. But after getting a CCTA last year, I found my calcium scores around 1800 and had some blockages.
Nobody should be trying to report cardiovascular age based on an Oura ring.
After nights with cannabis, my HRV dropped drastically.
The odds of him curing cancer are not zero. And then they've cured cancer. Certain that if anyone is listening to this and they've got a bad family history and they just haven't taken the test, I don't care if you're in your 30s or 40s, be aware and be aggressive about it, because you can treat it a lot better before you get it.
Hey, Joel.
How's it going?
Great to have you come back.
Yeah, good to see you
let's
guys
jump
again.
right in.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I grabbed a bunch of questions from when you were just here, 2-3 weeks ago? Yeah. So thankfully you're local.
It does help when it's right down the freeway.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one actually comes from me. So as the time of filming this, the new AirPods were just announced, are coming out this Friday, and they say that they have heart rate capabilities on them. And I'm like, usually you wear a chest strap, right, or on your wrist. So is there legitimacy to the accuracy?
Yeah. So anything that's not on the chest is using PPG. It's measuring basically changes in light coming through the skin, and there's plenty of opportunity to get that through the ear. So like I said, I think it was Jabra or a couple other companies that have had those for a while, and they seem to be probably at least as accurate as a wristband or a finger sensor. It's the same technology in a different spot. So as long as it's firmly snug in the ear, it's not moving around, you should get at least the same level of accuracy as you would on any non-chest strap device.
Okay, so they're always advertising heart rate, but you said it could also do HRV.
Yeah, the original ones could. And so my old system, BioForce HRV, we worked with a company that had an ear clip, and again, you're just getting the same thing through here, so you're getting the HRV through the ear lobe, and so yeah, you should be able to get it inside the ear too. I haven't seen their specific, I don't know if they're even giving you R interval data, they're measuring HRV with that. I'm not sure what Apple's doing, but theoretically you could get it as long as you were getting a good contact with the skin, you weren't moving around, that kind of stuff for HRV. So it's possible. Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna get some. All right, so the next series of questions come from the podcast in our last episode. So the first one is, what's the HRV difference between training to win and training to live longer?
So I would say the difference is what sport you're in, first of all. So if you're training to win as a powerlifter, your goal is not the highest HRV possible, because again, HRV correlates the most with cardiovascular fitness and VO2 max. If you're a powerlifter, you don't need massive VO2 max. Your training is not going to drive HRV up. In that scenario, you're really just using HRV to manage your recovery and make sure that you're not overtraining. And that's true of any sport, right? If your goal is longevity, higher VO2 max is generally better, and obviously recovery is still important. So I just would not place the same importance on your absolute level of HRV unless you're training for a sport that's aerobically driven. So like I said, powerlifter, strength athlete, bodybuilder, like they don't care necessarily about high aerobic fitness and VO2, so they're not going to care about driving it up versus longevity.
Nothing to add.
Okay,
great answer.
All good. So the next one's actually kind of for you, Matt. So we posted a video of your morning. You talking about your morning routine as a YouTube short, and someone said, "What would be the consequences of you waking up at 6:30 as opposed to 4:30? Surely better sleep and HRV."
So I'll be interested to get Joel's take on this. The way I guess the way I would frame it is, just because you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning versus 6:30 in the morning doesn't mean that your sleep quality is lower. Obviously, it depends on when you go to bed, how well you sleep, and your predisposition to your chronotype, your predisposition to being a morning person or a night person. So I guess I would push back on the idea that when you get up in the morning necessarily reflects your sleep quality. It could, but it doesn't have to. And I'm a morning person, always have been. So
yeah, see, I'm the opposite. I'm a night person. So if I was to get up at 4:30 in the morning, my numbers would be terrible. If he was to get up at my time or have my sleep schedule, his numbers would probably be worse. It is what your body is used to and comfortable with, and all those circadian rhythm factors go into that. So yeah, just because he's getting up at one time versus another alone isn't enough to know, oh, your HRV is definitely lower, because no, it's probably whatever your body's used to doing and is going to get the best sleep quality from.
Yeah. Now, I would say, I mean, it's an interesting data question or research question that I don't know if there's any information out there yet. If you were to look across the population at people who have a morning chronotype versus an evening chronotype, and you could control that data somehow for all the other variables that impact it, would there be a difference in HRV? But I'm guessing that would be a challenging data set to analyze well, and I'm guessing we don't have that information. But
Yeah, I've never seen it, but it's interesting because I've always been a night person, and
Yeah.
it's hard because I'm outside of normal, right? So if I go to hotels or I go to stay places, people are up, they're banging around. Like it's hard for me to get good sleep
Yeah.
when I'm traveling because everyone else is not everyone.
housekeeping is ready to clean.
Yeah,
your room at
exactly.
9
And
a.m.
my
Yeah.
normal schedule is go to bed around 2 a.m. and get up around 10 a.m., which is pretty far shifted.
Yeah.
My mom was the same way. My brother and sister are the opposite end. So I've just always had that routine. I've tried shifting it. I know people are like, you just get up earlier. Like, well, then you go to bed later. Like, try that. It's not that simple. I'm just far shifted that direction. So
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but I mean, there definitely is somewhat of a genetic component to this, right? And then, like you said, I think you also train yourself over time to develop certain habits. And,
yeah.
I
I
but it's a real thing for sure.
Yeah. I've tried switching and it's very difficult.
Have you ever done a genetic test that tells you if you're morning or evening? Like 23andMe told me I was morning, which lines up with what I
I've done a few different ones, and the ones I've taken that have given that data have definitely said shift it towards evenings.
Okay.
And I think it's just got to be cortisol, circadian rhythm, and who knows all the things behind it. But I have a very hard time shifting it back even an hour or two.
Well, we have an advantage because I know like the corporate world is set up for morning people. So people like you have a disadvantage, I guess.
Yeah,
That's why you work for yourself.
That's why I work for myself. And once I've kind of embraced like, hey, this is just how I function, I don't schedule things early in the morning. Like I just don't do it. If I take a flight, I'm not going to fly at 6 a.m. I don't care if it costs me a couple $100 more to fly at noon or
Which
whatever.
coming out of CTAC, there are a lot of 6 a.m. flights.
Yeah. So, I mean, I orient myself around it because I don't feel good when I get up super early. I know it's going to be disruptive to my schedule and my health. I just don't do it.
All right. So next one. So this is from, a YouTuber comment. Sorry, let me redo that. Okay, this is from a comment from YouTube. So the part about ADHD meds suppressing HRV makes a lot of sense. But now it has me wondering about what HRV looks like in folks that have ADHD, specifically unmedicated or unmanaged populations. And if HRV improvements have outcomes on symptoms, severity, and management. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know that I've seen data on it. And generally speaking, the people I know that are on ADHD meds, that you can see it, I don't know how many people I've said, oh, I have ADHD, but I'm not on meds, and I've looked at it. Because usually if they tell you they have ADHD, they're probably taking something for it. So I don't know that I've seen a ton of people on, not on meds that clearly have it to see what their HRV looks like compared to people that are on the meds. So I don't know. I can give you a great answer. I mean, I don't know what HRV going up would signify for them. Maybe it'd be better. I mean, there's good research like fibromyalgia. If HRV goes down and they're more likely to have fibromyalgic symptoms and that kind of stuff, there's some links in that area. But I don't know about ADHD, what it would mean for HRV to go up, but it's generally speaking not a bad thing, so it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. What about like beta blockers? Would that have any effect?
Yeah, I mean that definitely affects HRV because you're literally interfering with the rhythm of the heart, so you'll see it lower usually.
Lower. Okay.
Do you know, are there any large scale population data sets that have good quality HRV measurements? And I'm thinking about this in the context of that last question, but like, in UK Biobank, there have been some very cool studies looking at prescription medications that people are taking and other parameters. If you had good quality HRV on a population like that, you could actually get insights to some of these things.
The problem is there's so many different ways to measure HRV.
That's why I said good quality.
Not to my knowledge, because again, what are you measuring it with? What time of day are you measuring it? What calculation are you doing it? What filtering? There's so many variables to it that getting a really clean data set is really, really difficult, let alone across a large population. So there's like population norms that are MSSD, which is the most common across different ages and genders. But combining that with all the other data, I just haven't seen it, unfortunately. But there should be. I mean, it'd be really valuable.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next comment was definitely someone being a little bit snarky. So I think somewhere...
None of our viewers are snarky.
Yeah, none of ours, of course.
YouTube? What?
It was a short about, like, someone used the term cutting edge, right? And the person said HRV was cutting edge about 25 years ago.
I mean, HRV was cutting edge 60, 70 years ago when it came out.
Yeah, but has the technology improved so much that it could potentially be more useful now than it was back when it was cutting edge?
I mean, I think the technology of getting the HRV data is the exact same.
Okay,
right? Like
wow.
chest strap is still the gold standard. There's definitely, like I said, PPG sensors now that have come out in the last 10 years to make it easier. But again, I mentioned the problems with using those sensors and measuring overnight. I think the data is a bit less valuable on a day-to-day basis, and it's less accurate than a chest strap in a lot of cases. I think the next advances will just be combining the data with other data sets and having AI and different tools to interpret it for you and give you directional guidance as a result of it. So the process of measuring HRV is not significantly different. The calculations aren't different. The wearables are slightly different, but overall, it's been used for a long, long time. I think just the applications, these different ideas around longevity and health and fitness more broadly are the newer advances that are important.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing I would add to that is I think, what has changed is our understanding of the biology that underlies HRV and that connects it to all of these physiological outcomes.
Yeah, and just the awareness, right? I mean,
Right.
I used to tell people I was using HRV, and they look at me like I had an STD 20 years ago, right? and now, right, like it's on their watch. So there's so much more awareness. So I wouldn't say it's cutting edge in terms of the tech, but it's cutting edge in terms of people being able to use it now in a meaningful way.
Great. This might be a dumb question, so we can cut this out if it is. But so like with a glucose monitor, we wear CGMs, we get the glucose. Ideally, it'd be great to know insulin, but we can't do that from a CGM at this point. Technology's not there to have ongoing fasting insulin. Is there something better than HRV that we wish we could measure, but it's just not realistic to get it on a wearable?
I mean, I think people trying to get blood pressure and different measures like that. There's stuff like the PNOE, like the VO2 stuff that's looking at through the muscle to try to get oxygen, dynamics, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff you wish you could get, but I don't know whether I can think of a single isolated thing that's...
Yeah, I mean, maybe what this question is referring to is, and we talked a little bit about this in the full podcast, is, I mean, HRV is a biomarker for a much more complex biology of parasympathetic and sympathetic function and vagus nerve. So are there things related to that might be more direct?
Sure. Well, the one thing is we can't really measure sympathetic directly, right? We're measuring sympathetic indirectly by knowing that the HRV, the parasympathetics. We have no way of measuring direct sympathetic function without blood work, really. I mean, you can indirectly, again, say, oh, heart rate's elevated, sympathetic must be up. But we can't really measure that directly. We've never really been able to. So that would be an interesting one, is if there is some way through the skin to get pure sympathetic input and see what that's doing. Right. That would be interesting, but we really don't have a way to do it.
Yeah, for now.
Hopefully. For now, yeah.
So next question. How do we measure HRV without a smart device of some sort?
Can't, honestly. So you have to measure HRV, you're measuring the beat to beat intervals. You need plus or minus a couple milliseconds. Like you can't measure that with your finger or, some other counting method. Like you need technology to measure out the actual beat to beat interval with precision. And then you need to filter that out based on ectopic beats and different, you just can't do it, unfortunately. The closest thing you can do, I mean, resting heart rate is not necessarily a great proxy, but you can measure resting heart rate, sort of. You can estimate that. There's orthostatic tests. You'd measure laying down and measure standing up. You look at difference. That's probably something you could do with just heart rate. That would give you some gauges of HRV, but HRV itself, you just can't do.
So you mentioned the orthostatic test, and that just caused my mind to go on a tangent. What do we know about POTS? The syndrome POTS and HRV?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I haven't looked into it.
Huh, that would be interesting.
Would be interesting to see, though, yeah.
All right, next question. After nights with cannabis, my HRV drops drastically. What does this mean for regular users regarding recovery?
And is that a general thing that you've picked up?
No, not usually. I mean, if it impacts sleep quality or impacts them in a negative way, then obviously it'll go down. But yeah, generally speaking, you don't always see that. Sometimes you see HRV go up after. So there's a long, complicated thing that I don't think we fully understand. But the cannabinoid system is tied to HRV. So there are connections there. Exactly how it works, I don't know, and I don't know that we know in general. But a lot of times with people that use it recreationally, you'll see it go up slightly.
Because they're more relaxed.
Is that acute?
Relaxed.
Like
it's acute.
Right after they use it?
It's acute within a couple hours. It's modest. It's not like a huge spike.
Yeah.
But you'll generally go up a little bit. But then in some cases, we might see it go down. It could be the dose. It could be the type. I don't know. There's so many variables around cannabis. Who knows what they're taking or how much they're taking or how it's impacting them. But just a general rule of thumb, it going down is probably not a positive. It might not be a huge negative, but I would be aware of the fact that it's driving it down for some reason.
Mm-hmm. And then also it's the assumption that however they're measuring it is accurate.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing, is how are they, how are they move? The thing is, you really have to be pretty relaxed and still. Like especially if you're wearing a wrist or arm or finger, moving it gives you motion artifacts and it blurs the data. It basically makes it much less accurate. So you really have to be calm, relaxed in a steady state. And if you're talking, moving around, listening to loud music, doing all sorts of things, that's going to have a pretty severe impact. It's sensitive. That's the problem with it. It's sensitive. It's the problem and the benefit. It's sensitive, meaning it picks up a lot of things. It's sensitive, meaning it'll pick up a lot of things that you don't want if you're not careful there. So you could change your HRV by 20% just by doing this, more, even if you're talking to somebody, if you're like, it's a very it's like blood pressure. If I measure my blood pressure standing and then I walk around for 20 seconds, I sit back down, it's going to be totally different.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with HRV. So standardization is so important.
So the Morpheus, do you recommend right when someone wakes up, they do it in bed, so before they even get out of bed?
I mean, if you get out of bed and you get back in bed, just have a standard 2 to 3 minutes of stabilization. And so what Morpheus will do is it'll look at your heart rate and it'll make sure it's reasonably stable before it starts the test. So you'll hit start, but then it'll look at your heart rate, and if it's bouncing all over the place, it won't actually begin the measurement period. So we have some rule set in there that says, like, there's more than 2 beats change per 10 seconds, whatever it is, don't start the test because there's too much movement in there.
Okay.
And then people should get to know, like, what's my normal resting heart rate? If you know your resting heart rate's 52 and you're like, oh, it's 60, like, don't start it, right? Like, get down to where your normal range is.
Great. All right. So the last series of questions are all about lipids, because you guys brought that up a little bit in the last episode. So the first one is from MD. He said, with the family history of in that calcium score, I assume Joel Jamieson has gotten his Lp(a) checked. If not, please do so.
Sure. No, I have. And so I did an Lp(a) right after I got the scan, and it was 25.2, I want to say. So it was not high, not particularly high. And with the PCSK9s, it's below the detection level of the reference range. It was below 12.
So maybe worth just for people who haven't seen the first episode or who could use a refresher, give a little refresher on the history behind that. And
so I mean, the short version, I've got about as bad a family history as you can get. My dad, my grandpas on both sides all died of heart attacks and cardiovascular disease in their late 50s, early 60s. Mom had a stroke early 60s. Brother had stents put in at my age. And so I was doing everything I thought I needed to do preventatively to not get down that road. But after getting a CCTA last year, I found my calcium scores around 1800 and had some blockages. So just took a really aggressive path to lipids since then. And ApoB is, the genetic one that people are always concerned with. And I wasn't sure what mine was going to be because I had not measured it, but it was low. So, and historically, all my numbers were not high from the standpoint of what most people would consider. Like my LDL was typically 100 to 110, sometimes below 100. I think the highest I ever saw it was like 115, 120. So it was never just out of line. My HDL has always been the lower side, to be like low to mid 40s usually. So not in the toilet, but definitely not, super high, which I know has not quite the same association we think it does anyway. Lp(a), I didn't measure, like I said, but I do particle count for LDL particle count with the NMR lipid profile, same thing. It was like a little bit elevated, nothing crazy. So I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of those things. I'm not overweight. So I just, thought that I was on enough of a track where I'm, wasn't going to end up where I did, but here I am. So,
yeah. And I mean, this is a really, really, I think, useful case example, right? Where the standard biomarkers, and you were even doing more comprehensive biomarkers than most people would in terms of lipid profiles and blood work, right?
I did NMR lipid profile. I did HSCRP. Right. I did, about measuring blood pressure. Did a lot of stuff.
So in the absence of doing the calcium scan, and did you got both soft and hard?
Yeah, I got both.
CCTA, yeah. In the absence of doing that, typical primary care, they'd be like, "Hey, you're great."
They did,
you're
and
great.
that's the response I got, right?
Yeah.
And then they did the EKG, like, our heart's great, your resting heart rate's low, like all these things. You look great. I'm not worried about you. I mean, the cardiologist said, "I'm not worried about you at all,"
right?
Until I came back with CCTA. But then,
if you hadn't have paid attention to your family history and been proactive, you still wouldn't know, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. So, like I said, my brother had 3 stents put in at, I think, 45, 46, where I'm at. So he was much further down the path, and he didn't know until he started having chest pain in his mid 40s. So, and even then, I think if I had not been proactive, or at least I had not been as physically active and as my lifestyle where it was, I probably would be much further than I even am. So
yes, absolutely.
I think I've done a lot to reduce that risk. Yeah. And there's also some evidence that lots of training increases your calcium score, because it does seem to calcify soft plaque. So it could be a lifelong training is part of what's kept me from having more soft plaque that could be more dangerous.
You mentioned, so you did Lp(a), but did you ever do Lp(a) test before you got on PCSK9?
I did, yeah, that was the first one. So right when I got diagnosed, I did the Lp(a) and the ApoB and all of that sort of stuff. And then I got it. I did not get the Repatha for a couple of months afterwards. It took some time to get the Repatha approved. So when I first did the first Lp(a) test, like I said, it was like 25, and that was pre-Repatha. And really, I don't think I'd start in the statin at that point, but they don't affect them that much anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, this is another example where in the absence of having the CCTA, you would not have been able to get
wouldn't know.
Repatha. Well, you wouldn't have been able to get Repatha approved either, right?
Yeah,
at least to where insurance would pay
100%,
pay out of pocket.
Right? And I just talked to another friend of mine yesterday who was a former coach of Seahawks, pro athlete himself, played pro football, and his numbers were very similar to mine. He's been measuring LDL. It was like 110 last time he measured it. HDL was 52. He hasn't done LP(a), which I told him to go get. But he did the CTA last January, and same thing, 50% stenosis, LAD, 2 sections, calcium score was like 800, same thing. So relatively low numbers, and I would assume probably similarly for a lifetime, and still extensive blockages. So, I think it's just got to be arterial wall and endothelial function related, and who knows what all the variables are, but it's for the family, and his family history was bad. So I would just say, no matter what, if you have bad family history, even if you have good numbers, it's really important to be aware that even lifestyle and doing things right cannot be enough in that scenario.
Do you guys have any opinions on stents? I feel like I've heard mixed things on the data.
I mean, I'm not a doctor to.
Okay.
All I can tell you is what I've been told is that they work acutely to save your life if you're having an acute event, but they don't seem to have the same. They don't seem to make a huge long-term difference compared to not stenting. And they seem to me, from what I've seen and talking, like they don't stent nearly as much as they used to. Unless they feel like they really have to. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the obvious answer is better to be in a situation where you take care of it before you get to the point where you need a stent, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, by the time from what I've heard, like they don't stent you until you're like 80% blockage at least. And in my case, they did the stress echo, and I had no ischemia whatsoever. I maxed out the Bruce protocol. Like, there's clearly not blood flow restrictions, so I wouldn't be able to do that. So stent is not going to prevent anything. It's not going to help.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are probably worth just saying explicitly, though, because I know this kind of a conversation sometimes will lead people to say, well, that just proves that HDL and LDL don't matter. Right?
Yeah,
which
is
the
opposite to me. It proves the opposite.
At the population level, those are reasonably good biomarkers. It doesn't mean don't pay any attention to them, especially if LDL is high or you have the particle sizes that suggest, problematic lipid profiles. But they're not the whole story. And for individuals, the expected biomarker pattern from lipids in the blood may or may not actually reflect the underlying disease in the heart, right? Or in vascular disease. So that's why it's important, if you have genetic risk factors or if you have poor profiles in blood, that you do the following on diagnostics to actually look at the level of blockage or level of disease.
Right now, CAC scoring and CTAs are so easy to, not super easy to get, but they're much more accessible than they used to be. And a CAC score is not expensive. You can at least start there if you can't afford.
I agree, CTA. Although, and again, this is where I think maybe we don't have perfect data yet. Maybe there's room for discussion whether or not a CAC score alone without getting the soft plaque. How useful is that?
Sure.
I don't know the answer, but my intuition is get both.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. 100%. You should get both. Now go back for what you were talking about. So the one thing that I've genetically tested for and found that seems to be the most correlative is there's a 9p21.3 gene variant. It's an allele that basically says I overproduce vascular smooth muscle cells, and they can be proliferative in the sense they can contribute to the plaque and probably contribute to this overall endothelial dysfunction. So like he's saying, it's your lipids plus your endothelial and vascular function. So if I have poor vascular function, my endothelium is more likely to not track plaque, but become plaque burdened, even at lower levels of ApoB. It doesn't mean ApoB or LDL is not important. It means that my vascular system is hypersensitive to it. Right. And so if I had really high levels of lipids and this, I'd probably be much further along.
You'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, but the risk factor for the 9p23 variant, it's like 150 to 200% risk. Wow. They call it the heart attack gene, whatever that means. And in my case, it's probably pretty accurate. But just that one, being homozygous for just that one gene variant, 150 to 200% risk. And something like 20 to 30% of the Caucasian population from Eastern Western Europe has it, homozygous. Or maybe that much is heterozygous, I can't remember. But it's a significant risk factor.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. And again, I think, this really points to the importance of when you can, and particularly when the situation calls for it, whether it's a genetic risk or blood-based biomarkers, do the direct measurement for whatever the pathology is that you're interested in. Right?
Exactly. You can
and
measure
in this
the
case,
endpoint.
it's measuring the plaque, right?
Yeah, you can measure the endpoint, not the risk. You can actually look at the endpoint.
Yeah, and in typical healthcare, we don't do that until somebody has a heart attack.
Yeah,
until they're
exactly.
sick, right? So we got to shift that mentality.
The other thing that's interesting is, like I said, when I first went to the cardiologist, mid-30s, early 30s, maybe 33, 34, my mom was getting stents put in because she had extensive cardiovascular disease in her early 60s. And I said, clearly, what can I be doing now, right? Like, what do I do? What should I do now? And he looked at my blood numbers, said, oh, your blood numbers look great. He's like, try to get your ApoB or get your LDL, even lower if you want. Use lovastatin and red rice yeast. So I started doing that. And he said, come back when you're in your 40s, 40, whatever.
Which even that's pretty forward thinking. Because most docs are not going to say, use the statin, right, as a preventative, right, when your LDL is.
No, I mean, he says clearly, like, use some red rice yeast. It's lovastatin.
Which basically is a natural statin.
It's a natural statin. And he said, come back when you're 40. And he's like, I distinctly remember him saying, like, you're doing all the right things. Like, you're being really proactive. This is really great that you're so on top of this. And so in my mind, like, oh, I'm doing all the right things. Looking back now, if I was in my mid 30s, knowing my family history, like, I should have gotten a CTA right then. It would have showed something. I guarantee you would have showed something in my case. So I think family history is just such a big thing. If you have family history, you cannot take anything for granted.
Yeah, well said.
Good message. Yep.
Next question. So this user said, I personally have a very high LP(a), so 380, and chronically low HRV. I've always questioned whether the two could be related because on paper I'm extremely healthy, yet my HRV is stubbornly low. Last night I said it was 27, and that was actually pretty high for me.
I mean, in my N-of-1, I did not have high LP(a), but I had lower HRV than I should have had relative to what my markers would indicate, and I clearly had issues. So, I mean, I don't know that it's the cause. I don't think they're causally related there, but correlatively, they certainly could be.
And that sounds like somebody who, if they haven't had a scan yet,
should get one. Exactly. That's the whole thing. There is, you have the tools to figure out, are you actually accumulating plaque, where you're at in that process, and I mean, I just think if you're in that scenario where LP(a) is that high, you got to be really aggressive of checking it, and if there's plaque there, then that's the hard one because it's hard to reduce it. The Repatha and the PCSK9s will drop it a bit, but it's still, I don't know how low you can get.
I think it's very individual, right? I mean, again, I think the sort of prevailing wisdom that LP(a) is hard to move. It depends on the person. So, but once at least you can take whatever action
you can get ApoB as low as possible,
That's
even
right.
if your LP(a) is high,
That's
which will negate a lot of it at least. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, my LP(a) is undetectable in the reference range, and my ApoB is like upper 30s. I'm trying to get down to like low 30s, but right around there.
And there are drugs coming online that directly target LP(a) as well. So I don't know when
in the next couple of years, I think.
Yeah. 380 is pretty high, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 380.
That's way up there.
Sorry. Next,
I think the cutoff is like 70 something. 75 is like
for
high.
the normal range.
So this is like 4x that.
Yeah, it's way up there.
So this person said, gee, I guess I should immediately head to the emergency room since my overnight HRV on my Oura ring is typically about 20, but the Oura ring also says that my cardiovascular age is 13 years younger than my 71 chronological age, and that my VO2 max is elite at 43. My resting heart rate is 59, BMI 21, 0 CAC. Lipids are excellent, glucose control is excellent. Should I still head to the emergency room based on HRV alone?
No, you don't need to head to the emergency room.
Yes, go now. Jump in the car.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, not every single person with a lower HRV is in mortal danger. I'm not saying that.
And this is Oura ring data, not to bash Oura ring, but it's not gold standard data for HRV.
Yeah, and I would have to do the math to see what a 20. What did you say it was 20?
20, yeah.
20, and Morpheus would probably be in the 60s. I would estimate. It's not like it's, zero, like it's on the lower end, but all the other, so a resting heart rate of 59 is a pretty moderate level of aerobic fitness. So I wouldn't expect to see a super high HRV on that alone. Did they say VO2 max in there?
43 on Oura ring.
Yeah. So, again, it's Oura ring's VO2 max.
But this is, how old is this person?
71.
70s, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. So that's, for someone in their 70s, like that's not a super low HRV, and that's not a bad resting. Those numbers are for someone in that age group. That's certainly not.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, that's not. If it was someone in their 30s, it'd be a different number. But someone in their 70s, those are not bad numbers by their age at all. So
yeah. So do you know about the Oura? I can't remember what it is, but the cardiovascular age is like pulse wave
velocity.
Let's just ignore it. Nobody should be trying to report cardiovascular age based on an Oura ring.
No, they're using pulse wave velocity, which like a couple scales do too. But like it's
not there yet.
No, it's definitely not. Not to. That's a broad statement. Your cardiovascular age, like the most important system for oxygen delivery.
Bad advertising. I'm not trying to bash Oura. I've used an Oura ring. I don't use it anymore, but not because I don't think there's value to what they're measuring. But it's really unfortunate when these companies feel like they need to wade into things that they should not be wading into. They should not be reporting.
They're just putting numbers. I
cardiovascular.
agree. Like, you're putting numbers on things that's a big number to say this is your cardiovascular. I mean, VO2 max is a real clinical, meaningful output
Thank
in a
you.
measure.
Yes.
But cardiovascular age measured by a
It's just
PPG
misleading
sensor.
consumers into thinking they can measure something they can't measure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny on Oura, you can either let it do a VO2 max test for you, it's like a 6-minute walk, or you can type in your own number. And of course, I have like professional grade here at OptiScan.
Yeah.
So I did the 6-minute walk, it gave me like 33 or something.
Yeah.
And then I typed in my actual number, which is like 52.
Yeah. So that's like, I think we talked about the last one. The biggest problem is the further you away are from the actual test, the more unlikely it is to be accurate. So a walk is not going to be very good for predicting VO2 max. Like Garmin, if you're using Garmin and you're doing a lot of running and has enough data to look at your output and GPS speed relative to your heart rate, it's got a lot of data. It's going to be reasonably good. But if you're just walking, like it can't extrapolate a walking paced heart rate to a VO2 max.
It's so far from.
It's so far. It's like I
limit,
said, it's like trying to predict your 1 rep max squat from how many bodyweight squats you can do. It's a similar thing. Like you could bodyweight squat, who knows? But I could never predict your 1 rep squat max off that because it's so far away.
Different energy system.
Totally different energy system. It's just way too far away from the endpoint, what you're trying to actually gauge.
Yeah. But well said about Garmin too. Just from my data sets here at OptiSpan, Garmin has been the closest to our clinical grade machine. So I don't know, something about Garmin.
So Garmin bought, I forget the name of this company. Garmin bought a company that spent years and years and years developing algorithms for this stuff, and that's all they did. Someone will look it up. They acquired them a few years ago, and they just took all their algorithms, stuck them into Garmin, and that company was around for a long time. That just did algorithm development, and it's pretty good for predicting VO2 max, assuming you either run or bike. I haven't tested swimming, but if you run or bike, they've just got a ton of data on what people with different levels of VO2 max look like when they run or bike at different intensities.
That's interesting.
So that's what they're doing. They just built thousands of people. They do real VO2 max testing. They said people with a 60 VO2 max run, 5 miles per hour at 130s or whatever. Like they just built this big associational relation database, and they can predict reasonably accurately. In my experience, it's plus or minus 2 to 4, in VO2 from what you'd measure. It's reasonably close. But if you're not running or biking, you're doing completely different activities. You just got no idea.
Yeah. And I think this is a bigger sort of issue around just understanding, what is the thing you actually want to measure that gives you the information you're interested in, VO2 max in this case. What are you actually measuring? And that's, in this case, going to be correlated with the thing you're really trying to measure, right? Or you're trying to estimate. And then we start talking about these biological age or cardiovascular age metrics, like what does that even mean? What do you mean when you say cardiovascular age? You mean something about how well the heart is functioning because heart function changes with age, goes down. But there are probably like 1,000 parameters in the heart that you could measure that change with age, right? And so it's really conceptually it's fine, but it's a meaningless thing to say that we can actually measure cardiovascular age or biological age overall.
Yeah, and so it's funny to mention that because I did not the biological tests that are looking at genetics, but just all my blood markers. And it was telling me my biological age was like 13 or 14 years younger right before I got my CCTA results.
Oh, okay.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And that might even be true. That's the other thing about biological age is you can have a biological age that's conceptually lower than your chronological age, but it only takes one thing to kill you, right? So there's mortality risk, which is also correlated with biological age, but not perfectly correlated.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So by my blood markers, I was 10 years younger, but I still have massive plaque buildup. So
it's just an unfortunate place that we're at right now, where this concept of biological age has been bastardized to the point that people don't really understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, people understand health and that concept.
Yes.
Trying to put a single number to it is just. There's too many pieces.
Yeah, you're speaking math language. So I'm wearing Oura ring. I like it. I just think people need to stop putting, body part age. Yeah. Like cardiovascular age or whatever.
What's my arm's age,
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Look, in general, when it comes to fitness, I would say...
I was going to ask about my finger age. What's my finger age, Oura?
In
Sorry,
general...
Oura.
The most important measures are going to be output measures anyway. Like resting HRV and heart, those are really good. Those are useful numbers to track. But like if you still have a very low VO2 because you can't move around, like
Yeah.
You need output measures. You need measures
what
of
really matters.
strength, and you need measures of VO2, and like
Yeah.
those output measures are meaningful and in the big picture. These other indicators are just, are you going the right direction? Are you going the wrong direction? But it's not.
And
by
even then
itself.
they can be
And
misleading.
even then it can be
right?
if you measure wrong or the wrong tool.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
This feels related, but I was just on a website. It's similar to OptiSpan. I was really liking what they were selling and everything. And then I go to click their peptides, and they sold oral peptides. And from what I've heard,
first of all, they shouldn't be selling peptides, right?
Yeah, they have a whole, like, you talk to a doctor first, and they say.
So we're going to tell you which peptides that our docs will prescribe to you? Like,
yeah. But I thought of you because the issue, it's like 99% credible stuff, and then you add that one thing, and then it just makes me question everything.
Oh yeah, that's shady as hell.
The only oral peptide all that's had been used all is BPC 157. Supposedly can get in the gut orally, but that's it from what I've seen at least.
That's good to know. Okay, because I've heard the hyaluronic acid in the gut like breaks it all down.
In general, yeah, but I think that for whatever reason, BPC might have some.
It might, yeah. Again, I don't know that there've been great studies, but you're right.
Not.
And I mean, it makes sense given that at least initially, I mean, that's where it's produced, probably among other places. That's where it's been isolated from laboratory animals, and it makes sense that it could function directly there.
Yeah. Anything else, I don't think there's any research whatsoever to support those ones.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I work so close with Matt, but I feel the same thing about the whole biological age. It's like it could hurt the credibility of everything else on the company does that is legit.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like take someone in my scenario, right? Like I go do this biological age test. It's like, oh, you're 10 or 12 years younger. That makes me less likely to go get CTA or CAC score because I'm like, oh, my biological age is 10 years younger. I'm doing all the right things. Like I don't need to go to CT angiogram or I don't need to get CAC score. Like look at my age. Like you can give people a false sense of security when you're trying to assign these ages to them. That
both directions, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
absolutely. It can give the false sense of security, or it can people who are really doing everything they can from a lifestyle perspective, and then their biological age number goes the wrong direction, and it basically psychologically defeats the entire purpose.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's just
they're just marketing tools at this point, and they're bad ones of that.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So last comment from a YouTuber was sorry, let me repeat that. Last comment from a YouTube person. Sorry, what do you call it? I don't want to say fan.
Listener.
User.
Listener.
Thank you. All right, so last comment from a listener. So I'm looking forward to when he returns, discuss his Cleerly test. 1800 CAC score and a VO2 max in low 50s is an unusual combination.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I did not get the Cleerly scoring on top of that. So for people who don't know, Cleerly is just an algorithm that goes on top of the CT angiogram and tries to quantify these numbers into concrete numbers, because most radiologists will just categorize into mild, moderate, or severe, or these much more broad categories in these very narrow ranges. So I did not get specific numbers that Cleerly would give you, but overall there was improvement in my CTA from one to the next. There was a reduction in soft plaque. There was a reduction in the stenosis, my LED, from around 50% to below 50%, and that's what all she could say was, oh, it was about 50% before and it's less than 50% now. So there has been some reduction in those things. My CAC score went up a few hundred points, which is normal. That's the calcification process happening. So the soft plaque I had has become more calcified and less likely to break off basically and cause a heart attack. So she just said it's moving in the right direction and it looks better than it did last time. So I'm encouraged. It's only been 14 months, which is a pretty slow time frame to see large changes, but the fact that she did see movement in the right direction and there were clear differentiated things there in the soft plaque that she saw pre versus post means things are definitely going the right way. And my assumption, pretty strong evidence, if I didn't make the changes, I probably would not gotten better. I probably would have gotten worse. So I think overall, a big difference, and I'll keep going.
I think a lot about. Oh, sorry.
I was just to say, I think the Cleerly piece is interesting because you're right. They try to quantify positionally where the plaque is and what your occlusion is, which is what a radiologist is going to do as well. But they will quantify it. They'll give you a number. This is going back to our prior conversation. I mean, it's an interesting time right now because I think many radiologists don't yet trust the numbers that the Cleerly algorithm is giving. And so it's a question of how precise and accurate are those measurements. I don't think we know. So as long as it lines up directionally with what the radiologist is scoring, great. When it doesn't, then I think we need to ask questions.
I wonder how many tests have been done. Like, I wonder just if I take 2 CTA machines and I do 2 Cleerlys, let's say a month apart, Like, what's the margin of error?
What's
Like,
the
what's the variation
Yeah.
there?
I mean, I'm sure they have that data
Yeah.
because in order to get to where they are with in the regulatory space, they would have had to provide information on precision. Well, that's harder to know. So precision would be if you did the scan multiple times, exactly one right after the other, right, and just see what that error looks like, the variance. But it's close enough. A month you wouldn't expect much change.
But I also wonder how much different the actual CTA machine, because their data is only as good as their data, right?
This is I think a really important point because you have multiple factors at play, right? You have the measurement that the machine's doing, and then whether it's a human or the AI, you have the measurement that is being done by the human or Cleerly, right? Then you get propagation of errors. It's all complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard to know where the error comes in. I like the Cleerly just because the pictures are really cool, and I like being able to look at my heart, and because I'm a little kid,
it's cool.
Spin it around.
It does give you some cool data. I mean, it looks cool. It's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know how much. I don't know if it's better or worse than a good doc at reading.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, though, is the radiologist that I've worked with has been doing this for 15, 20 years. She was like, I could see how it'd be more valuable for a radiologist who's new to this, relative to her level of experience and expertise. She's very good at what she does. Someone who's just starting out probably does not have the same expertise, and maybe the Cleerly is a better tool because it's, it has some data points behind that they might not be experienced with. And then, like I said, the CT angiogram machine, from my understanding at least, are not all the same.
That's right.
There are older ones, newer ones, different levels of quality out there that you could get a really low quality CTA and the whole thing could be less accurate. But I imagine, like, when we say less accurate, we're talking about a lot of blockage versus like a little bit less. It's not going to say like you're clear if you have it's not like that far off.
Great. That was all my questions. So anything that we didn't talk about you wanted, either this episode or last one, that you want to touch on?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
Any more cool athlete stories, people you've worked with?
Any more cool athlete stories? None that I can tell on the podcast.
No wacky. Oh, yeah.
I have some Bob Sapp stories, but we'll save those for after the podcast.
Sounds good. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming by again. This has been fun. And, we'll look forward to following your health journey in the right direction as you continue to move forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, if anyone is listening to this and they've got a bad family history and they just haven't taken the test, I don't care if you're in your 30s or 40s, like, be aware and be aggressive about it, because you can treat it a lot better before you get it than after.
Cool. Where can people find you too?
Coach Joel Jamieson on Instagram, or just 8weeksout.com.
Great. All right. Thank you.